Now this is a particular game that I've wanted to look at for quite a long time, even though it kind of falls a little outside of my purview. I don't usually cover PC games, and I don't usually cover or even play point and click games. But then there just doesn't seem to be anything like Police Quest. Nearly 30 years after its debut, people barely seem to know just what to make of the games. It's kind of a black sheep when it comes to video games as a whole. As such, almost everything about it is interesting in some way, from the origin of the series, to how it evolved, to the way that the game handled the job of being a police officer, to the series' heavily problematic aspects. I mean, there's a hell of a lot here, and even though I don't have much in the way of a childhood experience or anything, yeah, this has just got to be done, and the time is now. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. For now, in this little video here, I'm going to stick purely to the first game, as well as its remake. Police Quest is one of those games where if you're going to try and do it, you need to do it in fairly smallish doses. We'll explain why. Anyway, let's start with the origin story, for even that is incredibly unusual. I mean, just who is this guy named Jim Walls, who worked on Police Quest? I mean, what other games did he work on previously? What software houses did he represent? Where did he get his computer science degree? The answer to all of these questions, of course, is none. Jim Walls' career before games was as a highway patrolman for the California State Police Department, spending over 10 years on the road until 1984 when a simple traffic stop turned into a shootout. The details are naturally kind of hazy, but Walls was put on leave to recuperate from the incident, and in 1985 he so happened to be introduced to Ken Williams, head of Sierra Online, riding high thanks to the success of games like King's Quest. But now Sierra wanted something that was a little more grounded in reality. The actual idea of creating an adventure game based on the police force came from Ken himself. Such an idea interested Jim, who wanted to make it as real as possible. And of course, in those days, consultants and the like didn't actually exist. Jim gradually fleshed out a story based on his experiences as a police officer, and as a result pretty much stumbled into being hired by Sierra as a full-time games designer and computer programmer, and all despite having to be shown where the on-off switch was on his first day. And so the game in question, Police Quest In Pursuit of the Death Angel, was created, with the help of Al Lowe and Roberta Williams. The game finally saw release in 1987 and was touted as being, well, somewhat different from the norm for Sierra. No kins, no Daventry, no ridiculous feats of logic, and certainly no lounge lizards or space janitors. Instead, the story of Police Quest takes place in a regular fictional American town by the name of Lytton in California, with a regular precinct, regular amenities, and a regular drug problem that just so happens to be getting larger. It's up to you, the forever blue-chip beat cop with an ambition, Sonny Bonds, to pound the streets, make your name, and ultimately get this shit sorted out. The subtitle of Police Quest may as well be, So You Wanna Be a Police Officer? For this game will show you exactly what being a police officer entails. And if you were a kid playing it who wanted to be a cop, then it would undoubtedly have crushed your dreams under a big fat wheel of police procedure. When they sold Police Quest as being a truly realistic simulation of police work, they weren't kidding. This is the nastiest sort of old school game, the one where you constantly have to refer to your manual, almost just like a cop would in order to be able to interpret radio codes and the like, and also to check out the big rules of police procedure. Make no mistake, if you don't follow these to the letter, then you are completely and totally fucked. Literally to the point where if you do not walk around your car before getting into it and driving away, you will not have performed the requisite safety check of your vehicle, resulting in a flat tyre and a game over screen. Well, speaking of driving, yeah, those traffic lights sure as hell aren't cosmetic. Go through a red one and it's an instant game over. I mean, what, you think this is LA Noire where you can just smash through pedestrians willy-nilly on the way to solving a hit-and-run? There are few games as heavy-handed as Police Quest in this regard. Any failure to follow police procedure to the letter usually results in more than just a loss of points. It results in the absolute worst possible outcome. You didn't put your gun in the locker before booking a perpetrator? They grab it from you and shoot you in the face. Decide to cuff a suspect in the front rather than the back? They smash you in the head and send you into a coma. You'll even be chewed out if you don't take your required shower whenever you change clothes. This game is brutal. It's pretty fair to say that Jim Walls, he took this job deadly serious. One wrong move as a cop will result in the death of you and everyone you care about. This all pretty much sums up the first half of the game. There's very little in the way of story, you're just a regular old boring cop working a regular old boring beat. It all seems quite exciting at first when you're immediately thrown into a road traffic accident that actually ends up being a murder, but from there you slip neatly into the mundane, whether it's asking a gang of ruffians to move their bikes, a drunk driver, or in typically ridiculous 1980s fashion, dealing with a woman named Helen Hotz, no subtlety is not the game's strong suit, trying to sweet talk her way out of a ticket. I would say that these parts certainly do feel authentic in that you've still always got to be mindful of procedure, like God help you if you don't read someone their rights before you place them under arrest, but the stakes aren't exactly high. Things do finally kick into gear somewhat when you're confronted with the suspect in the aforementioned shooting that happens in the start. In this one you've got to be mindful of a whole lot of shit. You have to radio backup, you have to prepare everything, load up your weapon, get the suspect to lay down, make sure to search them and the car too. You've got to follow procedure to the letter or you will be killed. You can't take it slow but you can't rush it either, and there's so many little things that you've got to remember. And I guess it's at this point where you're at least grateful for having dealt with the lighter cases before getting to this. This bust is in truth probably the high point of the game, the moment where the game's procedure-based gameplay really shines. And it's kind of unfortunate that it's right at the end of the whole traffic cop section. But on the whole, yeah, it's frustrating, it's a pain in the arse, and yes, it can be quite boring. A constant headache to play, to basically have one eye on the screen and one on the manual so that you literally don't put a foot wrong, to absolutely have to take notes in the way that a cop would. But it's certainly different, the sort of play you'd rarely encounter in adventure games at all, even in Lee's early days. Back then there wasn't much of an idea on what sort of things were won and what was right in terms of adventure game design, everything was still being felt out. Police Quest, in retrospect, is a game that gets so many things so drastically wrong that it goes right around the sun and back to being interesting again. The value it puts on realism and procedure at the expense of everything else making it somewhat unique. It's also kind of intriguing to look at such a game in 2015, when police and criminal dramas have found a new lease of life through examining every last detail of procedure and what it means, how the tiniest thing can be so important and what have you. Everything started with The Killing and The Wire, and went from there to True Detective and beyond. We're even starting to see this bleed into certain games here and there, like recent indie FMV revival sleeper hit Her Story. And hell, it's not like the mundanity of police work wasn't an appealing subject back then either. Stephen Bochco's highly influential late 70s, early 80s series, Hill Street Blues, which I suspect was probably a big influence on this game, revived the police serial through being an examination of the relationships between a regular group of cops that were just as likely to be dealing with burglaries and domestics than they were likely to be dealing with murders. It's not as if Police Quest existed entirely outside of media, is what I'm saying, and there are even aspects of it that could make it just as relevant today as it was in 1987. If it wasn't for one little thing, that being the story itself. How to deal with that? I mean, well, Police Quest is an 80s game, written by an ex-cop, at the very height of the war on drugs. What sort of stance do you think it's going to take, In terms of anti-drug stances, this is basically the video game version of Reefer Madness coupled with Death Wish 4: A Crackdown. The black and white approach it has to everything couldn't be less subtle. It's not just pushers being the very spawn of Satan, which you'd come to expect. Even users are scum, pathetic, and set for certain death the moment they take their first puff of weed. Police officers, on the other hand, are absolutely faultless, godlike, divine angels on this planet. It's far too easy for this story to feel like something commissioned by Dare. One particular subplot involves a police officer's kid, who we never see, falling into a drug habit. Not more than 10 minutes later, she ODs. Not more than 10 minutes after that, she dies, purely to give you that last little kick of motivation to go after the biggest drug pusher of them all, Jesse Baines, the title's Death Angel. Absolutely everyone involved with the drug game in any way, whether here or in the second game that follows on from this, winds up dead. The message is pretty clear, and as heavy as an anvil to the skull. And do I really need to go into the problematic nature of the whole cops are infallible gods message? Let's just see now. 6 years later, Rodney King. 6 years after that, Rampart scandal. Present day, it feels like there's a suspicious death in custody or in a bust just about every week. The war on drugs has a lot to answer for, and when your game is dealing so much in realism as it is, well, this sort of thing can't not be called out, even now. It badly dates Police Quest even more than the gameplay, even more than the language that the game uses, making it feel like a total anachronism. So yeah, the story's a real piece of work, putting it mildly. The nature of the game means that it kind of has pacing problems too. I mean, the entire first half of the game is spent on the beat, dealing with a lot of rather minor incidents that really do hammer home the sheer mundanity of police procedure. In terms of following that part of the gameplay in detail, it's quite intriguing. In terms of actually telling a story, it's bloody glacial, and if you're not interested in the other side, it'll turn you off immediately. It certainly won't make dealing with the text parser or the endless parade of stereotypes the game throws at you any easier, that's for sure. And then there's the driving. Oh my god, the driving. The driving where you manoeuvre 3 incredibly small pixels around a small map while trying not to die, and fail at it again and again and again. I am not sure if I have ever encountered anything in a game that is as acutely frustrating as Police Quest's fucking driving. Anyway, it's only until the second half when Sonny Bonds gets transferred to the narcotics division where any real action begins to take place and you actually start to move forward with the plot, for whatever that's worth. Once you get into the narcotics, there is quite a lot of different stuff going on that keeps the game moving quite up to the finish, from timing-based drug busts to undercover work and playing poker. Yeah, playing poker in an adventure game. Oh, and naturally you can't cheat it. If you get a string of bad hands, get ready to waste an hour on this shit, and that's with constant saving. Still, it's certainly different, and a lot of it brings you back to the stuff that made the murder bust earlier in the game so damn good, but it definitely takes effort to get there. It's a weird example of a game that's backloaded rather than front-loaded. There are other little elements to the story that are more amusingly obsolete, little details that could perhaps only come from a game written by an ex-cop, like the story of Old Brown-Nose, Chief of Police, or a hostile disposition towards hotshot lawyers and judges, or the rather offbeat way that the game deals with colourful language. Like seriously, has anyone said the word jiggers after 1910 or so? Or other characters like Sonny's perpetually angry Sergeant, Dooley, or his hooker with a heart of gold love interest, Marie. And then there are others that might just make you wince a little for their hokiness, stereotyping, or hell, just plain old racism. The game is pretty much every trope from every seedy 80s Golan Globus film rolled into one, only without the violent bits. Still, Police Quest is a very interesting game indeed to write about. Most people didn't know what to make of it then, and they still don't really now. There's no other game like it aside from other Police Quest games. And of course, the sad fact is that in the end, writing about the game is, for the most part, a hell of a lot more rewarding than actually playing it. And yet weirdly, the absolute best way to play it is to immerse yourself into it totally. Check out every detail you can think of and examine every little thing, because the chances are good that there's probably going to be something there. Just like in any good cop show you see today, that's what makes it exciting. The detail is where it truly shines the most, where Police Quest still survives as a truly authentic relic from its time period, as an account of what life on the force entails of and so on. It's quite a lot of fun to toy with this game, to see all the many ways you can lose that aren't just crashing your fucking car. If you just try and plough through the game to advance the story, you'll get bored pretty quick. It's all about the detail with Jim Walls, you see, and the procedure, which you will follow. There are ways in which this game was gripping, where the detail was fantastic and it succeeded at what it wanted to do. And there are other ways in which this was one of the most annoying experiences I've ever had playing any game ever. A riddle wrapped in an enigma. It's worth mentioning, of course, that the original Police Quest was remade in 1992 with VGA graphics and a whole new SCI engine, in much the same vein as several other classic Sierra titles around the same time. This turns Police Quest into a much more contemporary point-and-click game, although it's still possible to use the text parser if you so desire. Now there are a whole lot of new things to talk about naturally. The neat new music that isn't from a PC speaker, or the detailed sprites and character portraits and backgrounds that finally turn everyone into the low-end soap opera actors they always wanted to be. But there are also a lot of other differences in how the game plays out. It's far, far from a straight remake. A lot of this probably has to do with Jim Walls not being with the company anymore. For reasons that are somewhat unclear, he left Sierra in 1991, and in a sense, although the series is his baby, the first Police Quest and its sequel are the only PQ games he headed all the way through. He did work through most of Police Quest 3, which looks a lot like this game, but apparently left midway through development, meaning that the product was largely finished up by Jane Jensen, later of Gabriel Knight fame. It's perhaps only funny because most of the big Sierra games are someone's absolute baby from beginning to end. King's Quest and Laura Bow are Roberta Williams, Leisure Suit Larry is Al Lowe, Space Quest is the guys from Andromeda, Gabriel Knight is Jane Jensen. You couldn't imagine a game in Lowe's series without those people. Police Quest, it's Jim Walls, but then after that it kinda got passed around like a hot potato, not to mention the whole confusion of celebrity endorsements. No wonder the series ended up so far away from where it originally started. But this is all a digression, of course, one that may be explored again if I ever revisit this series. For now, let's go back to the remake. The big difference with the remake is that although faithful, the game is, in some areas, a bit more lax when it comes to following procedure. The point and click interface does help a bit here, seeing as you now don't have to type in commands for absolutely everything, but you don't have to do things like walk around your car for a safety check anymore. Still have to shower though, that shit's never not important. Although there are some areas where the detail does get increased. You now have to type in the combination for Sonny Bond's locker whenever you want to use it, and you will never not have 269 in your head when playing this, and you have to type out the actual arrest codes when you're booking someone. In a sense this adds more procedure, but in another sense these things are purely here to function as the game's copy protection. Being able to use the mouse for everything now does make things a lot faster and easier to manage, and you can still use the numpad to control Sonny's movement. The busts here are largely the same as they were in the first, with only a couple more instant game overs added, and they even made playing poker optional. The driving is also very different, certainly slower and you're more likely to need a map for the first bit at least, but much more forgiving. Even if you crash, you're immediately just pulled back a few steps in Prince of Persia that didn't happen type fashion. A lot of this does serve to make the game a smoother experience, I mean that's for damn sure. The other big change is in the dialogue itself, which is most certainly not an improvement. The game still tells the same hokey story as ever, but the original Police Quest certainly had a way with dialogue. You might not necessarily have called it good, but there were characters and there was definitely a writer's voice thrown into the mix. The Police Quest remake didn't have Woolslow, nor did it have Roberta and Al Lowe to help it along. And so it's all kind of generic and nothing about the writing ends up being all that interesting. Again, much like in the first game, it's very entertaining to do Fins 1 and just see what happens there. If you do that, then you might see some fun stuff. The writing certainly gets amusing for all the many different game overs, but it's just a shame that it didn't add a whole lot to the game itself. Again, if you try to plough through this game focusing purely on the story, you get bored. You have to be in a certain mood to immerse yourself into these games, which is why I can only take on one Police Quest game at a time, and I sure as hell am not going to be moving straight on to the next one. The Police Quest VGA remake then. Is it good? Bad? Well, it's Police Quest, just in a different form. And Police Quest is neither good nor bad. You have to judge them for yourself. Do you want the improved interface, graphics and music of this game, or do you want the ancient graphics but better personality of the first? Either way, you'll be getting a very, well, Police Quest-ish experience. They're indescribable and barely comparable to anything else. It's one of the few times where, honestly, I think you've just got to go ahead and play both of them. And so, the first Police Quest is in the books. Perhaps at some point we'll look the series up again. We can see the two sequels, which are arguably better games. We can see what Jim Walls tried to do after he left Sierra, or we can see what happened to the series when they brought in the guy who previously stoked the fires of the war on drugs and the LA riots to head it up. And that's not a joke. There's so much more to talk about. It's just that talking about them requires me to actually play Police Quest, and you can't just motor through these games one after the other, even if you're a serious adventure game head, which I am not. Well, I just wouldn't want to do it. It's too irritating. But yeah, maybe. Maybe there'll be a day when I'll want to pound Lobita once again to serve and protect in the streets of Lytton. For now, you have three choices. You can restore, restart, or quit. Me? I'm gonna quit and end the video. Thanks for watching Police Quest. Next time, don't make this mistake again. Wait, that didn't sound right.